Well, when is a carbon tax not a carbon tax? When it becomes an emissions trading scheme, according to the Prime Minister, who today seemed to back away from the T word. Tony Abbott says it doesn't matter what you call it if it hurts the economy, and a high-profile economist today agreed with him. From Canberra, here's our political correspondent, Tom Eagledon.
Warwick McKibbin's a Reserve Bank board member for another month, but he's not letting that stop him criticising the carbon tax.
Australia does have a comparative advantage in high fossil fuel energy related production, and if we tax ourselves and if the world taxes us, that's going to hurt our terms of trade.
How are you? Sorry, I snuck up on you, didn't I?
The word tax itself is becoming contested space in the carbon argument, even though the Prime Minister's used it often.
It's a scheme that would start with a fixed price for a fixed period, effectively like a tax.
That is effectively a tax, and I'm happy to say the word tax.
There we are.
But that happiness has faded. She stopped using the T word in about April, and now she's disowned it entirely.
What Tony Abbott likes to refer to as a carbon tax, what Tony Abbott calls a carbon tax.
If it looks like a tax, if it works like a tax, if it costs like a tax, it is a tax, and the Prime Minister is being both untrustworthy and tricky.
Julia Gillard's office denies there's a change of direction in her communication strategy, but there does appear to be a new message on the horizon.
Oh, look. Is that good?
An emissions trading scheme, which I support, John Howard supports, Malcolm Turnbull supports. That's an aim that I share with John Howard and Malcolm Turnbull, an emissions trading scheme.
But Julia Gillard compromised on an ETS with Bob Brown, who had his own name for what's become the carbon tax.
We want to put a carbon levy not onto the taxpayers, as the big parties would, but onto the polluters.
He said that when he'd just learnt at the last election he'd won the balance of power in the incoming Senate, giving him an unprecedented say in policy.
A couple of days ago, a baby whale was born in the Derwent for the first time in 200 years. 2 days later, we're seeing the real birth of a new political movement.
Tomorrow, the Greens officially seize the balance of power. 9 Green senators will sit, a far cry from 1996, when Bob Brown was first elected to the Senate.
And that causes me to ask, what is that relationship with the Earth, or indeed with the universe?
The balance of power is a crowning achievement for a party that traces its roots back to 1972, making it the oldest Green political party in the world, and one that's had its fair share of critics through the decades.
Who's running them internationally? It's hard to say. Gaddafi might be, who knows?
But I tell you,
the critics haven't let up since.
The greeny monster has to be fed. Every 4 or 5 months, we've got to give a human sacrifice to the Greens.
Bob Catt is accusing the government of suspending the live cattle trade to Indonesia to keep the Greens happy. Graziers in his electorate agree.
I think we've been forgotten for years, and I think it's time we all made a stand, to be honest.
The government's just announced a $30 million rescue package for the industry, with those affected by the ban eligible for an immediate payment of $5,000 through Centrelink.
This is a short-term hardship package.
But there's no word on when trade will resume, and the Agriculture Minister's been facing rising anger at meetings with graziers.
Everybody in this room should be so angry at you people, they should just bloody slaughter you. What you've done here to this group of people in this room is absolute bloody bullshit.
With all due respect, the offer of compensation of $25,000 is but a piddle in the Norman River.
Whether or not the Greens did have something to do with the government's ban on the live cattle trade to Indonesia, they say they are close to a deal with Julia Gillard on the carbon tax, which seems to be in its final stages of design. For her part, Julia Gillard wants to phase it out by 2015 in favour of an ETS, the earliest date the Greens will allow. Tom Eagledon, Late Line.